we came over to America. So,
You were learning to live by faith.
okay. Yeah. All right. I'll go back to that. Um, when we arrived here, we moved into a rental home with no furniture. We had no car. We had few friends. And my husband lost his job after 2 months. I was about to have our seventh baby. We had no health insurance. I hadn't even been a doctor until I came here when I was about 7 months pregnant. And we were really, and we were in a desperate situation. It was absolutely desperate. And so I find when we're, as people in desperate scenarios, we realize where our foundation is built upon, or what our foundation is built upon. And so as part of that, we gathered together as a family, and we prayed for everyday stuff. And that's when we saw God really move. He stepped in. He provided miracles through some of the local community, and we just followed him on a day-by-day basis, and as to where he led. But it changed our lives dramatically.
Oh, I'm sure it did. And it's encouraging to hear tales of people who have gone through situations like that, that you can't sugarcoat it. You can't make it sound any better or any worse than it was. It was what it was. And actually came out the other side with a stronger faith, a stronger foundation, and actually used those opportunities in the discipleship of their children. So I have a ton of follow-up questions for you just based on that. And the first thing that really comes to mind is, as a wife that's not only pouring into your children and, as a mom and discipling them, but you also have to recognize the deep struggle and anguish and anxiety and fear and everything else that your husband is dealing with. How were you able, and really kind of what would you encourage wives whose husbands are in a difficult situation? There's a lot of difficult situations right now. How can we encourage and really help be that complement, that helpmeet for our husbands during those difficult times?
Well, I think that for all of us, if we're all going to go through hard times. It's excuse me, life is just hard, and so if you're not going through a hard time right now and you're in a time of blessing, then be careful. It's going to come. It's just going to come. And I don't view hard times now necessarily as negative times, because it's a time when God gets our attention.
Yes.
It's a time when he, as I said before, teaches us what our foundation is being built on, and whether that's a solid rock, whether that's Jesus, or whether that's some other stuff. It could be family, it could be a husband, it could be, just a job. It can be built on some other stuff. And so hard times refine us. They teach us more about ourselves and about where we are on our journey of faith. I was very fortunate to grow up in a Christian home. I'm a pastor's kid. I never really rebelled. I gave my life to Jesus at 14. I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit that changed me very dramatically at 16. And so I had a good role model as a mum, and I understood what it really meant to be a wife and a mum. For a wife who is going through a hard time, or a husband and family is going through a hard time, my advice is to make sure your foundation is your faith in Jesus. Because at that hard time, if my foundation had been my husband, and he had let us down by losing everything, by making us move countries, by taking us away from our family and friends, by having us where we're living from hand to mouth, I'm human. I would have used harsh words, to really pull him down. And he was already down. There wasn't much further to go. He would have had a nervous breakdown. I sometimes think he would have just curled up and died if I had have really picked on him. But I realized in that hard time, we were following Jesus. God closed doors in order to get our attention and to lead us on a new journey. And that new journey was coming to America Things didn't go great once we got here, and we just had to trust him. So my advice in those scenarios is look to Jesus. Look for Jesus's hand on your life, where he's leading you, the next step that he puts in front of you, and go for that. It may not be your destination. The next step he led us to on our journey was to rake lawns, mow lawns, babysit, clean houses. That was our next step, and we did it together as a family. We were homeschooling. We actually started homeschool. We had it in Australia. We had a normal life. You know, our kids, we were buying our home. It was a nice home in a nice suburb on the northern side of Sydney. We had our kids in a good Christian school. You know, it was a very normal, safe life. And then we lost everything. We had to sell our home to pay debt. We moved cities before we came to America to downsize. And so we went from stability to instability in a way. And then, of course, then God moved us over here. You've just got to follow the next step that God opens. The cleaning houses, mowing lawns, raking leaves were not where our destination was, but God never wastes anything on your journey. And in that time, he taught us and the kids hard work, that everybody matters, that everybody makes a contribution, how to even get on with one another, understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, understand what our strengths and weaknesses are, and when I need to offer grace to somebody else, how to be understanding of one another's, who one another are, is. And then we started homeschooling in Australia. When we got here, school, and we got established in Nashville, the schools had already started. Our original intent was to put them back in school. But we were under such pressure. I said to David, I've got to have the family. I mean, we've got nothing else. We've only got God and each other. I've got to have the family around me. And so he said, well, let's homeschool for the first year. And we basically homeschooled for the rest of our kids' lives. So, but those years when we worked together set the stage for what was to come, because when Rebecca St. James got signed, again, we'd worked so closely together, we could not bear to be not together anymore. And so we traveled with her as a family. We've traveled the world as a family, back to Australia. We've traveled crisscrossed America again and again, going to concerts. And the boys actually became her crew. So they would set up the stages, they would set up the lights, they would run the lights in the concerts, and then they would pull down at the end of the day. So we learnt the work ethic and how to work together by mowing lawns and raking leaves. And then God used it to lead us into working together to support Rebecca.
That it's so exciting to hear stories like that. And even as you were talking, I was thinking, in these times, in these unexpected, I would never wish for these sort of times, that's where you really get to rehearse what you know about God. You get to lean into, this is what is true. I have said it with my words. Now I get to actually lean into it and see if it holds. And God is so gracious, like you noted, to never waste any of those moments, to grow us. And then he's so good to give us that hindsight where we see what he was doing, or imperfect view, but still we get to make sense of a lot more of it than we could in the moment.
That's correct.
But how were you all? You noted that you did all this stuff together. You worked together. You made it through this difficult situation together. So how did you actually use these difficulties as discipleship opportunities as you were parenting your kids?
I think probably the biggest area that we used these difficult times to disciple the children was in the aspect of prayer. You know, we had to rely on God, and praying became an active family event, really. We had no furniture when we first came, as I said, so we would gather sitting on the floor in our living room, and then we would pray. And because we had so many needs, because we were so alone in so many ways, we actually prayed for very practical things. So we would pray for groceries. We would pray for a car. We would pray for furniture for our house. We would pray for jobs so that we could bring in money. We would pray for a new job for David, which he did end up getting before the end of that year, or within a month or so of losing the other. But we praying for our needs to be met. And the beautiful thing about that is that the kids actually are a part of the journey. They're witnessing what's going on. They know they're needed. They know they have purpose.
Right.
They know they're contributing. And then praying together enables them to see God in reality, because we then experience miracles. We experience miracles from the hand of God and from our neighbors and from people who then understood from the church what was going on in our lives. And frankly, you don't witness God. You don't, when you experience God or witness him blessing you, of providing for you in such practical ways, you will never be the same.
Yeah.
And so that life impacted each of our children in a very deep way.
Well, and the other side of that is, if as parents we try to shelter our kids from the difficulties, we don't want them to see, that we're struggling or whatever the situation is, then when they launch out and they have difficulties, they aren't equipped to handle
No.
it, because their view is life was just a breeze growing up. And so we're really robbing our children of those intense moments of learning to trust their God at a very personal level as they are making their faith their own. And so I love the way that you expressed that, and encouraged us to bring them in on that, not only in the prayer but also in the work and the following of God and what he tells us to do.
And the other beautiful thing that was a very practical scenario for us, a very real scenario, is that there were days when David and I did feel overwhelmed. I mean, where things aren't going great, when we're running out of money, when we're not seeing stuff. And it's in those days that often God uses the children to actually sort of inspire us or encourage us. It'll be the kids who will say, it'll be fine. Like God's got this, or I don't know, just even in their prayers, the simplicity and the trust element of a child's prayers, I think is just something beautiful.
It is.
So when we were feeling weak, he would often use the kids to encourage us. And so it was a real community, aspect. We were really living life every day very strongly together.
That's amazing. Just so many good elements of what you said for us to extract as parents right now, right where we are. I so appreciate your heart in all of this. Wanted to kind of segue a little bit. You mentioned that you all were homeschoolers. We are all homeschoolers here who are listening in primarily. So I assume that you were probably still homeschooling when you hit the road with Rebecca. So how, through all of this transition, through the difficulties, the hard work and so on, and then it eventually hitting the road, how did you all manage? What did homeschooling look like for y'all?
Great question. Definitely not like a school. I actually, in Tennessee, we have to register with a local school legally. And so I registered with a Christian school in Tennessee. And the supervisor of the homeschoolers actually encouraged homeschooling parents to not make their school at home look like a school.
Good for
He
him.
encouraged us to think outside the box, to turn everyday normal elements of living life into an educational or learning experience. And so his philosophy helped me not feel so bad, probably, about not having like normal school hours,
Right.
normal school day, normal school stuff, because he really was, I think, a great thinker outside the box of what homeschooling should look like. He had 9 kids, so he was actively doing it, but he basically had the philosophy is you teach a child, you give the child the skills to learn, which I suppose really is reading and basic math. Then you give them the desire to learn. just being inquisitive about life, being inquisitive about what they see around them, about, just living life, whether it be cooking, whether it be gardening, whether it be animals, whether it be, and then put it all together. And he said, they will learn. That was,
Yes.
you put kids in a stimulating environment, give them the skills to learn, the desire to learn, kids will learn. And there, basically we did all year round schooling. So when we were on the road, the kids were encouraged to read, maybe journal would be the max that they would do. On days off, we would endeavor to do a little more. And then when we came home, we would get back into sort of normal schoolwork.
Right.
And then, but there was one year, probably about 6 years, I reckon, maybe could be 8, after Rebecca got signed, and it was actually her 4th album. And we were about to tour for 13 months. And I still had kids very actively in the school system, like they were all in the school system, ranging from probably high school down to elementary. And that one blew me, because we'd sort of gotten into a functionality of, using what everybody's on vacation or those off days to work. But I was like, oh my goodness, what is going to be my expectation of this year? I don't want to do schoolwork on a day off.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to sit down and want to do schoolwork, like, let alone anybody else after they've worked long hours. And so I actually went to God, and I think this is a beautiful thing about our relationship with God, is it's a living, active relationship.
Yes.
And so I went to him and I said, Jesus, you see this year that's before me. These children are really, at this point, my responsibility to teach them. What is my expectation this year? Because I know I don't want to do as much schoolwork. And if I don't want to do it, then they're not going to want to do it. So what is my expectation? I said, my fear is that they're going to get to 18 and they're going to look back and say, Mum, you screwed my life. I mean, you have messed me up. I'm now going to have to go back and do, to the local community college, and I'm going to have to get my GED, and then I'm going to, I'm going to have to learn the basics because you didn't do a very good job. And I think that's every homeschooler's mum's fear, in actual fact, that they're not going to keep up. They're not going to make the grade, that you're going to mess up their lives. Well, in this particular year, I went to Jesus. I said, I don't know. I'm really, this is now pushing me like big time. And as I sought him, he gave me a promise, and I knew it came from him. And he said, I'll teach them what they need to know. And frankly, that year I had to stand. And for even ensuing years, when our life looked so different, I had to stand on that promise. And every now and then I would go back to him and I would remind him that he had promised me this promise.
We talked about this, Lord.
Yeah. Remember? You told me that you would teach them what they need to know. And now our age range of children is 46 down to 32. And I know, like, they're all now well and truly adults. God has been faithful. He taught them what they needed to know. None of them have been to college. They've continued alternative lifestyles. They've continued alternative learning systems. All of them are responsible, community, some of them leaders, some of them not so much, but, they're all active. They all know who they are. They are all Jesus followers. They are all holding down, jobs that God's taught them what they needed to know.
Yeah, that's amazing. We talk here at Teach Them Diligently, we talk about heart schooling, that we are called actually as Christian parents to heart school our children. That's where excellent discipleship-focused parenting uses whatever educational tool to prepare them for whatever God has for them in the days ahead. And as you were describing the way that you all did it and what God taught you, that just fits in so beautifully with this heart school paradigm of recognizing that our mission is to point them to Jesus and give them a
Uh-huh.
foundation for their faith and to prepare
Uh-huh.
them for whatever he has. We don't know what he
Yeah.
has, but his
Yeah.
plans are good and he delights to use his people. And that's an astonishing truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And it's been active in our lives. Like
Yeah.
I sit back, I'm 69 years old. I sit back at this point of my life and I am humbly grateful for
Mm.
the work that God has done. I'm humbly grateful for the journey that he's led us on, which has been so alternative, so outside the box, so bizarre in so many ways. I'm eternally grateful that he has taken the work of my hands, I suppose, and David's, and he has allowed these kids to learn. He has led their lives. He has touched each of their hearts,
Mm.
and that they're following him. You know,
Right.
the precedent has been set on what life should look like as believers, and they are carrying the legacy. I think all of them at this point, well, those with school-age kids are homeschooling. They recognize that that had been such a blessing in their
Mm.
life, being able to be together, not split up the family a lot, to travel, to have flexibility of what school looks like. And so they are continuing that legacy in their own families. And I don't know, I just feel very grateful for God's, goodness and faithfulness.
Absolutely. No greater joy than to know that your children walk in truth and they're following him. It is
Uh-huh.
such an amazing privilege to see your kids grow up and launch out and hold to that foundation that they've been given. Helen, before we get, completely through the podcast, I want you to tell us about the movie that's coming out. There is a
Mm-hmm.
new movie, Unsung Hero. It is about your family. It is about your story. What can you tell us about that movie?
The movie is, I think it relates to every single person, to tell you the honest truth. It can
Mm.
relate down to teenagers. I've heard of a 15-year-old teenager who says it's a new favorite movie. Um, I've heard numerous testimonies of men or husbands who go and see this movie and they end up weeping,
Mm.
challenged. I've had a couple of men that I've heard of just recently who have said that they're going to go home and love their family better, that they're going to play with their kids more. For women, it challenges us on what it means to be to be, in a way, I suppose, the glue that holds the family together, to be a strong woman who, when life's tough, keeps a positive attitude
Mm.
and gets down to the nitty gritty of what needs to be done. Um, and it's really a family movie. People who are immigrants relate to it because it's an immigration story. It has us leaving Australia and coming to America. It's a family story because we tackle life together as a family. I think most people leave encouraged and
Mm.
inspired. And really, it's a story I hope that God will use to encourage families, to encourage husbands, encourage wives.
Oh, I am so excited to see it. Our family is planning to go as soon as it's out in the theaters. Were there any amazing stories that happened during the filming? Anything that God did, even during that part of it, that you would like to share with us?
We actually had a prayer team who would join us and pray. We only had a 6-week window in which to film the movie.
Wow.
And there's so many elements. We needed a train and we were filming it up in Louisville, Kentucky, and they had looked around for a more of a vintage train. And then somewhere as they were looking for actually they were also looking for a venue that looked a bit like the Opera House in Australia.
Mm.
As they were looking for the venue, someone told them about a club, like a train club that had about 16 miles of train track and a historic train, that they would do special events and special trips, and they were all volunteers. And
Wow.
so we ended up getting a historic train. We ended up finding the venue that looked like the Opera House that we could do part of the filming in. One of the other significant things was we were filming from sort of the beginning of October through to November 15th. And then we were through, COVID was still sort of around.
Wow.
We had COVID restrictions. Anybody had to pass a COVID test. We did have COVID come through and get one of the kids, I think, but it did not spread to others, or it was a couple of people, but it didn't shut the movie down. We had another instance where we had an outdoor scene that's in the movie, that's at a playground, and that was one of the last days of filming, and they were worried about weather getting worse, and they filmed that, and had been raining all morning, and they needed it to be dry. It dried up for the afternoon.
Wow.
The sun came out, and they filmed this playground scene, and that night it snowed, which would have ruined everything.
Wow.
So numerous. The lead actress who plays me was only found 10 days before filming. She had
Oh my
4
goodness.
kids. She's Australian. She lives in Brisbane, Australia. She dropped everything. Her husband said,
Wow.
go do the movie. She was gone for 6 weeks. So
Wow.
he picked up the slack. I mean, just amazing stuff.
Wow. Wow. God, it is so good to care about the details too. Care about the
Care
weather,
about
care
the
about
details.
all of those little things. And we can learn so much even from stories like that to just strengthen our faith, passing those things along to our children as we go. Um, well, were there any, I don't want you to give too many spoilers because I want to make sure everyone goes to see the movie, but is there a specific scene that's super special to you or something that you just love and you'd love for us to look out for when we're watching it?
Well, there's cameo roles of every member of our family in the movie.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
you can look out for the real people in the movie. And then it's probably the real element that touched me deeply was when we were coming to our first Christmas. I was very pregnant because I ended up having my daughter on the 29th of December. So I'm very,
Wow.
very pregnant. We did not know how, as we're getting into December, how we were going to provide Christmas for the
Mm,
children. And I was pretty overwhelmed by it because I'd always treated Christmas as a pretty special holiday. And this year I knew we did not have the finances to be able to provide Christmas for the kids. So I'd been sort of sending out hints like, well, I don't think Santa's going to find us over here, and it's going to look different for us this year. We're going to have to buckle down. And unbeknownst to me, God went ahead of us. He used a second grade child to go back to his class who was looking for a family in the local area in which to support that Christmas. And he raised his hand and suggested our family. And we were more blessed that year than I think ever before. And it came directly from the hand of God. And I look back and I stand on promises of God, promises that He'll never leave us, He'll never forsake us, that He will be there with us on our journeys. I promises that He will provide and care for us, that He'll care for our needs. But frankly, I didn't see Christmas gifts as a need. I
hmm
saw those Christmas gifts as a mum's wants, not a need. Um, and so when He navigated to bless us via this local community, I looked back and I thought, He had done that just for me. He had done that out of love and encouragement for me as a mum. And I saw a different element of God where He does care about those details, where there's the kindness of God that was shown to me. And I'm forever grateful.
Wow, wow. Exceeding and abundant gifts and blessings He is so faithful to give us. Well, Helen, where can we find out more information about the movie? When is it coming out? What do we need to know to make sure we don't miss it?
Well, you may have to put it in your notes,
We
or
will do
whatever.
that for sure.
But and there is a link available, so you can, check out that link. The movie is called Unsung Hero. It comes out April 26th, and that is actually David and my 49th wedding anniversary, which is
Oh, yay.
totally like
Just
happenstance.
another detail.
They have another detail. And then it is in 2,500 movie theaters across America. And they can find more. I think there's a unsunghero.com site, and there is a ticket area in there where they can
Okay.
find out more information. But if you want to research it and find out those details more accurately than I specifically know, and put it in the notes, that would be great.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Well, Helen, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. It's just been an honor to talk to you and to hear what God has done through the years.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Well, you are welcome. And to everyone else, thank you for hanging out with us here today. I am sure that, like me, your heart was blessed. You're challenged to really evaluate how, as a mom and as a wife, you are responding to the different trials and even the blessings that God brings your way. Are you using those to turn praise to him, to disciple your children, to help them see God's good hand through every detail, every up, every down? He never leaves you nor forsakes you. I encourage you with all my heart to go see Unsung Hero. Grab your family, grab your friends, share this podcast so that so many can hear Helen's testimony and the stories that she shared, because I can't imagine anyone hearing that and not wanting to go see the movie. So check out the links that we're sharing in the show notes. We will put this in our stories and so on. So we want to make sure we make it as easy as possible for you to get your tickets, make your plans to go, and then tell us how you liked it. I want to hear everyone's response on this as well. I'm very, very excited to see what God's going to do with this film. So thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thank you.